Welcome to Powered by Instinct, a podcast for professionals who think about how your fundamental nature drives performance. In each episode, Colby experts will interview top performers, team leaders, consultants, and coaches to discuss identifying team members' strengths, aligning those strengths with their jobs, and optimizing individual and team performance. If you're interested in getting more done more naturally, then let's jump in.
Hi, welcome everybody to another episode of Powered by Instinct. I'm glad you all are here listening. We've got a great guest here today, Jessica Mogill. Jessica, say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Jessica is a Colby certified consultant. She's been at CRISP for, how long have you been at CRISP?
About 8 years now. Yes,
Eight
it was
years.
supposed to be a 30-day stint, and here we are 8 years later.
I love it. And CRISP has been an important partner of ours. They focus on the legal industry, but they help growing law firms and really growing businesses grow. And they use Colby. So our discussion here today is really going to be about, she's a great example and has great stories about how to put Colby into practice. So sure, we all get our Colby results, but how do you turn that into real results out in the world and in businesses that are already thriving but want to grow and do more? So a little bit more about CRISP. I think importantly for this podcast, they are the most recent winner of the Colby Enterprise
Yes.
Award. So thank you for all you guys have done. For those of you listening to the podcast who don't know, that's an award that we at Colby Corp give out every year to the company that has, well, we call it enterprise because sometimes they're nonprofits or government entities, but the entity that really uses Colby well, comprehensive way. So it's not just getting a Colby result, but it's understanding what that means, putting it into practice internally and externally. Jessica and CRISP really know Colby well, and they've been using it. So again, thank you, Jessica, to you for doing all that. Why don't you tell the audience more about, so you've been at CRISP 8 years. What's your journey at CRISP?
Awesome. Yes. So thank you so much for having us on here. I am so excited. Colby has been a huge part of my life, both personally and professionally. And honestly, I brought Colby into CRISP when I came in about 8 years ago. And so when I said it was a 30-day stint, Michael and I are married. So he's the founder of CRISP. We were together before I came in. Always make that very clear. I was going to come in for about 30 days and help him. And as we talk about Colby, I'm an 8733. Very much makes sense that I came in to help him with some operations to get some processes in place. And there were about 7 people then. And we have now scaled to about 100 team members. And through that process, really just embraced Colby, not just for us, but also for our clients. And we have gone from being just a video production company to a marketing company. And now we are on a mission to help over 1,000 law firm owners grow their revenue by $1 million each so that we can make $1 billion impact in the legal industry in the next 5 years.
So as you were mentioning, you knew Colby before you started with CRISP. Tell us, how did you find out about Colby?
Yeah, so this was actually at a previous career of mine. Colby was a big part of their culture as well. And it was actually my first week at that company. And I was going to be a trainer. And they said, great, you're going to go get Colby certified. And I knew nothing about Colby, had no idea what it was. Of course, people have heard of different assessments and things. And it immediately, honestly, truly changed my life. And in so many ways, because I will digress a little of how I wish I had known Colby in my younger years. I'm actually an engineer on paper. And that 3 implementer, had I known it then, would not have boded very well there. And so it really, really gets into like the people side of things because I did graduate as an engineer, an industrial engineer. I went on to do engineering sales, and I could not for the life of me figure out why it was so painful for me. And when I say engineering sales, I was in warehouses, quite literally looking at like conveyor belts and optimization and how can I make things faster and better. And I had to go back and draw all of these things in CAD and use 3D modeling. And I dreaded it every single time. And understanding Colby, of course, now I'm like, oh, I get it. The cognitive was there, the affective was there, but the conative, wow, I would have totally chosen a different path earlier on had I known that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And we're going to do a little short interpretation of your great 8733 talents at the end of the episode so we can kind of get
Okay.
back and talk to you, and really almost more for the listeners, because you've heard the interpretation before, but
Yes. Yes.
just so people have a better sense of, well, what the heck is this 8733? What does it mean? But taking Colby over to Crisp, tell us about your role then at Crisp and how you personally and then the company uses Colby with its clients.
Yes, absolutely. So when I first came in, Michael's assistant actually was great. She would get so many things done, and they were not done to his standard, and they weren't done, and he just could not understand. He's like, "Why are things not organized? And I don't understand. Like, this person is supposed to be keeping me on track and everything." And I was like, "You've got to take this assessment." And I had actually had him take it prior to me coming into Crisp, and um it made a lot of sense, and it still makes a lot of sense. But that was kind of the first peek at that. And what we learned was that she was really an initiating quick start with very, her follow through was not as strong as her quick start. And so he had these frustrations, and I was like, no, 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 you don't understand. Like, there's nothing wrong with the person, and you just have to put them where their strengths are. And so I immediately had everyone in the company take the assessment, and through that we actually have had every single person in the hiring process. We do not hire them without them having taken the Colby assessment. I actually won't even do a final interview with someone unless they have taken it. And it's really helped us with just role alignment across the board. And I think the best example that Colby really gives, and when you guys are teaching this, is like writing your name with your dominant hand versus your non-dominant hand. And that's the quickest way for me to explain it to people, is really just to say, like, you can do it. It's just slower and it's more painful and there's a lot more friction. And so we've used that internally to align, and we really have kind of like micro cultures of Colby. So, like, we know our sales team is a great Colby under certain circumstances. Our marketing team does really great with a certain Colby. And it's really helped us not ever to disqualify candidates, ever. It is actually to have them interview. And we have, I would say, a quarter of our company have interviewed for one position, and we've actually put them in a different position because we have had them take the Colby assessment.
I love that. That's great. So that's the internal part. Tell us
Yes.
more about, if you'll start, describe more what Crisp does for its clients. Actually, just start with that, and then we'll talk about the Colby piece after.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, we started as a video production company. We evolved into marketing, and now we are a coaching company for law firm owners. And when I say law firm owners, we mean committed, ambitious law firm owners. So, we are really helping people accelerate, not just on the business side of things, but also personally. So, we have masterminds, workshops. We also train and coach and mentor their team members as well. All along this process, every single one of them is taking a Colby assessment. So we are looking at really how to run a business. So, law firms aside, I have worked with every industry out there. So I do believe this applies to everyone, but at the root of any problem is people, at the root of any solution is people. And as I mentioned, Colby has just played a huge part in that for us. And so we really embrace this, and essentially anything that we have done internally that has helped us with our massive growth, we do the same thing to equip them with the same tools, the same arsenal of things. And it's been crazy. It's been a wild ride, but along the way they've learned so much, and it's really transformed them.
Yeah, so I don't know if all the listeners know, but I'm a reformed lawyer. I shouldn't say it like that, because that kind of implies that there's something wrong with being a lawyer. I really liked being a lawyer. I didn't do it for a long time in private practice. I still use those legal skills as the CEO here at Colby Corp. But it's interesting because lawyers often think of themselves in like a different category. And it's true, they're doing different work. Like,
Right.
all industry has its own work, but there are also so many constant things, that go along with, especially if you broaden it out to like professional service firms. And yes, partners in professional service firms
Mhm.
have a weird balance of, they're running the business, but they're also providing the service. And sometimes those things conflict, and some people are involved in both and some people aren't. And yeah, I mean, I totally understand and kind of see right away how, as you're saying, even with then adding in the private life, the
Mm.
personal life for those people, when you understand yourself better, it's gonna help all those areas. So tell me, can you think of a couple examples of clients that you've worked with where they've, learning their Colby results really helped them in maybe both of those, running the business and also providing a service, and how you see that playing out.
Yes, yes. And I'm actually glad that you say that because the way we always really describe this is they went to school to be attorneys. They did not go to school to be business owners. And that's really where we come in with a lot of this. And so, one firm comes to mind right now. He's out of Indianapolis and he had never heard of this assessment. And he isn't initiating Quick Start, which I know you're going to interpret that and explain that a little later. He was absolutely mind blown by understanding this. And he realized because he needed people around him to help with the details, to help with the processes and all of the paperwork, all of the things that just really quite frankly like he dreaded those things. And the way that he actually believed in Colby so quickly because he got his results and he was like, "Wow." He called two paralegals who had moved on. They'd become attorneys. They had not worked there for probably 10 or 15 years, but he said those were the best people I had ever had. So he called them up and he said, "I have a very odd request for you, but I need you to take this assessment that I've just learned about." And so he did. He had them take this assessment. They were so happy and so, willing to do so. And essentially what he found out was that their two scores were very similar. And so he started looking at everyone within the team and he realized some of them were not that same profile. And the way he put it is just what Colby is. It doesn't mean that they couldn't do the job. They just had to work so much harder at getting the same thing done. They were not
Right.
happy doing it long term. And so what he found was like when these scores fit, that's the way to go. It's just easier on everyone. People are happier. And that's the only way that he hires now. And he really said, like, honestly, he said, "I got lucky or unlucky. Before Colby, you're just interviewing." And until he started working with Colby and Chris, he really didn't know how to do it. And now he is growing and adding people. And he said, it's not just good people now, it's great people.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, I know I get this question a lot running Colby, and I'm curious what your answer is. Do you see trends by Colby result for certain jobs, like in law firms? And maybe let's start with lawyer, and if you want to even, subgroup that, like the managing lawyer or other types of lawyers.
Yeah, that is a great question. Larger firms, I typically see the owner has a little more of initiating quick start. I think you have to in that case just because you're willing to take a lot more risk and to put a little more out on the line. Managing, I always see a lot more of initiating fact finder, initiating follow through. A lot of the support around the attorneys often also has the long blue line, the long red line. I find that there are so many details, especially in trial attorneys, that just have to, you've got to cross every T, you've got to dot every I. And so I do see a big trend when I go out and I train these offices. Much of the support staff is surrounded really by that initiating fact finder and initiating follow through.
Yeah, and to answer the question a little bit myself, to me, the biggest trend is so many lawyers have that initiating fact finder. I think it's a couple of reasons. I mean, as you're saying, and it depends on the specialty a little bit, but
Of course.
so much of being a practicing attorney is details, and it's, doing research and being an expert on stuff.
Mhm.
Those are actions that really, I mean, that's initiating fact finder to a large
Yeah.
extent. I also think that to some extent, process of becoming a lawyer weeds out a lot of people who are counteracting fact finders. So
Yes.
for those of you in the audience who are less familiar with the Colby jargon, the counteract fact finder, those are people who are, they really focus on just a few key bullet points. They
Mhm.
simplify naturally versus the other end of the spectrum. We're talking about those initiating fact finders who, they focus on detail. They do
Yes.
lots of research. They get that. Yeah. So law school, I mean, the bulk of it, especially the first year
Oh,
and a
yeah.
half, it's all about, you have to do that over and over and then figure out how to apply it. So yeah, I think a lot of people who would be really good attorneys are weeded out if
Hmm.
they aren't initiating fact finders. They're still around, but,
Yes.
as you're saying, I think the quick starts, we see a lot more initiating quick starts who are those, they're leading growing firms. A lot of time they are more risk takers.
And I actually have a couple examples of those that I've even trained, and I'm thinking of one right now. I believe he's like an 8 or 9 quick start, And his entire team, as I mentioned, is usually surrounded by all of these initiating fact finders. And he has been in practice, I mean, 30 plus years. And when I went and did his Colby training, he literally closed the day and said he was so close to just closing the doors and being done with this, but now he's like, I understand why. He was basically like a tornado of ideas all the time, wanted to change, wanted to do everything, and he felt paralyzed by all the people around him. And it was just aha moment where the team was like, we get why he does this now. And he
Right.
also was like, we get why they are doing this now. And so it really, really helped as far as just communication and how to take on new initiatives. But yeah, I mean, he was ready to hang up his hat because of these frustrations. And he's happily still going now because they have an understanding of everyone's strengths.
So do you find yourself being brought in more when there's a problem that like that guy, and I don't know if that's why he brought you in, where
Mhm.
I'm ready to be done unless something gets fixed, or is it more, you know, oh, we just want to get better if things are going well, but Crisp is, we've heard they're great at helping firms grow even faster. What's the trend there?
Yeah, yeah. So for us, when we go in, I mean, I think an initial part of any client coming in, they really just want to grow. And at the end of the day, like they are stagnating one way or another, whether it is the people, the processes, the marketing, whatever it might be. But actually, part of our onboarding for every single coaching client that we bring on, they must take the Colby assessment. And we take that very seriously in terms of matching them up with what CRISP team members they're going to work with. We want to make sure that there's going to be as best of a communication form as possible. And part of their package is actually for us to go out and do a Colby on site training with their team. And we recommend that we do it sooner rather than later because it is so enlightening and it changes so much. I mean, I can give examples all day long. I had another firm and he's probably had most of his team members with him 10, 15 years, and they're cloning and they're all exactly the same. And he had no idea why they were just in this kind of rut, you know? And he's like, this makes so much sense. And they were all initiating fact finders. And he's like, this can be a problem. Like, we're not going to move fast enough and keep up with things. And so it's just things that they didn't even know, you know, for 10, 15 years, and then going in and being able to make that impact it's incredible.
So when you start telling them about the Colby stuff, how often do they push back and say, okay, but I'm not going to change, or things are going fine. Thanks for telling me, but kind of push back. Or is that not very common?
It's probably, you know, a good third of the time at least, and so, you know, of
So
course, you're
what do you
introducing
do?
this. Yeah, you're introducing this concept to these people who know so much, and they're like, "I've been in practice for so long, I don't need this, it's another assessment, I've taken this and this." I really just kinda hone in on it, and I'm like, "You just hear me out, just give it a chance," and back to that initiating fact finder, of course, myself being one as well, they're usually the ones who disagree with it the most because they know everything or they've done their research, you know? But I just honestly, in Glob Shop brings it all to life for them. It's amazing. But I really just tell them like, "Hey, let's go back and let's think of certain situations and let's think of your frustrations." And they're reformed. They're reformed very, very quickly with that. And I think really truly spending that full day with the team and them understanding and being able to dissect things. And I think that's actually probably one of the best parts of any training is when someone's like, I don't do that. That's not me. And literally 10 people are like, that's you. It really just validates everything, which is great.
So how often do team members push back? I mean, you're kind of implying that some of them say, no, that's not me. Do you find it? I mean, are the team members more likely or less than the kind of the boss to say, I'm not sure about this Colby stuff?
They are actually much more likely to push back a little bit. The firm owners, I find, you know, they're open-minded because they've already taken that step to be in our coaching program. They know that we're doing something, and we literally tell them anything we're going to coach you on, we ourselves have done it, Crisp. We're not going to trial something on you. And so, but then, you know, the team members can get resistant and they're like, what are you coming in here to change? Or what are you coming in here to tell me that I don't know about myself already? And so the day is just, it's so enlightening to be able to really go through, you know, each of the modes and then things just kind of click. And if they keep resisting, I literally just keep going until we can find an example in their life where it happened. And I'm like, it could be a personal thing, it could be a professional thing, but somewhere you have acted out this MO of yours.
So what do you do after that initial meeting, session that you do with the team? What are your typical, I know it's not always the same thing, and maybe
Mhm.
give some examples of what are your follow-ups with them to see how they're doing, adjusting, or, whether it's putting people in different roles or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we definitely have a lot of follow-up that happens after that. And every coaching client has a coach internally at CRISP as well. And I often speak to a lot of them about the assessments. I'm actually going to use another example of one of our clients. He's in Florida and he is initiating Quick Start again. So he's a 5294. He truly used the words and said he has weaponized Colby.
I don't know if
um,
I like that, but
I know.
yeah,
The way he put that though is he said he has everyone's Colby assessment in a book on his desk now. And he basically says, anytime I've had a frustration or anything, he goes and references that before he ever, wants to blame it on someone, take it out on anyone. And he jokes, he's like, they're not all me. He's like, it's frustrating. He said, but I need those people and I need that reality of having that across the board. And so he really, honestly, he said it's like having a legend on a map. And so we encourage them, like, every hire after this, we're going to have them take the assessment as well. And they believe it and they know it. And it's just great to see that them actually putting people in the right seats by using this.
so if you can tell us a little bit more, because we've really been focusing on Colby, which is obviously the point of the podcast, but you guys do so much other great stuff. Will you tell us a little bit more about other things CRISP does with its clients?
Yeah, yeah. So, like I mentioned, we started off in video production. So that was the very beginning of that. We still have that as a core function because we believe in people telling their stories. We believe in that being the brand of everything. So we do that along with the marketing for that. And then our coaching program really encompasses so much. So everything from us training them on Colby to quarterly workshops. So recently or last year we built out a 55,000 square foot office with a training center. So they come out here quarterly for like masterminds. We host a huge summit every year. So this year we're actually doing it at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So we have really pushed the limits on that one. And so that's a great one. We bring in so many speakers, but it's really this network and this community that we've built. And now we train their team members, as I mentioned, so they get that same experience of being able to come to our facilities and really go back and make themselves better, make the firm better, make their families, everything better just by being able to make that impact.
And again, I just want to say a little bit of thank you, because I mean, you guys have a huge impact on your clients, and by bringing Colby into them, I mean, obviously, I hope and I think, and you've kind of talked about, we help you have that big impact, but you guys really help us reach our mission, which is to help more people understand their cognitive strengths,
Mhm.
so that, and then use those strengths to achieve the things they care about most. And, you know, for you guys most of the time, and for us, that focuses in on their business life. That's a huge part of all of our lives, and that's why they
Mhm.
hire you guys. But I do want to shift a little bit, because there's also the personal side, and we didn't really prep for this too much. So I know I'm putting you on the spot, but you knew with my 7 and Quick Start
I do
that
it.
I do that. So yeah, you mentioned you and Michael, your husband, and also your
Yes.
business partner. How did learning each other's Colby results help you guys?
Yeah. So I, as I mentioned, was actually Colby certified before I met him or anything. And it was probably 3 months in, and I was like, you have to take this assessment. And of course, he's like, what are you doing to me? And it's so funny. And again, I know you'll kind of talk about these numbers more, but he initiates in 3 areas. And I have only actually trained two or three other people with his exact MO. And it made a lot of sense. I think the biggest thing that is really I think it gets rid of a lot of the stereotypes. And so I say that because he's a one implementer. Therefore, do not ask him to touch or fix anything. But I think the stereotype is that the man should be the handyman and they should fix everything and they should be, checking the light bulbs and the locks and doing all of the things. And so I never personally had that stereotype, but Colby really just eliminated any of that pressure, of that mindset. And it's great. I mean, his parents have taken the assessment. My mom's taken the assessment. My brother, like we have really had so many people take it. And it's wonderful because his dad is a six implementer and he can pick up all of those gaps. But it really makes so much sense. And it was like, okay, well, what are the things maybe that could drive us crazy about each other? And as you talk about that initiating quick start, I was like, all right, I'm trying to keep up. I'm trying to keep up. And so that is absolutely something both personally and professionally, but it really helps us lean on each other's strengths as well. I mean, that's the reason he even brought me in, was because of my operational mind. But anything that's kind of like, hey, let's be faster on our feet, make a quick decision, travel, personal life, anything, I'm like, Michael, that's all you. Let's go.
Right. Yeah. And, so my wife and I, different MOs. Well, actually, fairly similar because mine isn't radically different than Michael's. We're very different in follow through. Where
Uh-huh.
he's an initiating follow through, and I'm not. But yeah, with Quick Start, my wife accommodates. So you're a three, and she accommodates. But I'm more the you know coming up with ideas and
Oh,
taking
yes.
risks and doing things differently just because that
Uh-huh.
sounds like what I would do. Yeah, I was about to say it sounds fun, but sometimes it's not about the fun factor. It's just, well, I need to. Like,
Exactly, exactly, and we kind of joke even internally. I mean, so we use Slack to communicate at our office, and everyone actually has their Colby MO like in their name, and so we know when we're communicating here. But the team actually jokes because Michael is a 7771. If we're in like a big offsite meeting or a long anything, we're like, all right, which seven are we going to get today?
yeah.
Because or sometimes we'll go in and I'm like, Michael, I've got the organization, I've got the follow through. I need you to bring quick start today. And so I guess that's the beauty when you do initiate in multiple areas of being having that adaptability.
Yeah. So I think you mentioned communication, and we're kind of talking both personal, and then you brought it
Mhm.
back to business. So you can do either one, personal or the business side. Where do you see the biggest, and by biggest, I mean kind of most frequent applications of understanding Colby and changing the way people communicate?
Yeah, so there's so many ways, both internally, externally, even with my mom is an initiating follow through, and so knowing those things, I'm an initiating follow through. Sometimes they kind of battle because we both have our ways. But internally we've really made a set of tone, whether it be in an email or if it's a video or anything. But we actually really set a tone of like, hey, fact finders, this is your version, and we go into all of the details, all of the why, and then we say, here's your quick start version. Actually, usually the other way around because the quick start's not going to read beyond that. But we really try to keep that in mind. Or, is this someone who is initiating follow through and they need more of a process or a visual? And so we keep that in mind both internally with like training, onboarding, like Colby is part of, their first 30 days and understanding that. And then the same thing with clients. As I mentioned, it's part of their onboarding to take this assessment so that we can actually match them with the best person here to be able to meet their needs with how they're going to get things done.
So I'm curious. You mentioned clients, but and you were talking about your clients at Chris, but are you aware? Do many of the law firms you work with change the way they work with their clients because of Colby?
Yes, actually. So they don't always of course go as far as having them take the assessment, but they use
Right.
these tools and they really think about now and they're like, "Oh, maybe that's why they were asking those questions." Or maybe when this person tuned out, I was going way far in depth of something they didn't really need to know. So
Right.
yes, they absolutely take these things into account, especially, they're dealing with oftentimes really tragic times or the most difficult times that their clients have dealt with. And so this gives them another way to be more in tune with their clients' needs.
Yeah, we've heard that a lot with our financial service industry
Hmm.
clients, but they do have a different relationship because of the circumstances you were describing. A lot of times when you're dealing with your lawyer,
Yes.
you're not in the best place. But I'd never talked to you about it, and I don't know that I've talked to our own law firm clients to hear if they're
Hmm.
using it with their clients. So
Oh,
that's
yeah.
interesting that some
Yeah,
of them
they
are doing that. That's great.
absolutely have. And whether it be even in like kind of their templates or their things that they put, the welcome packets and things like that, they try to take in that information and understand their MO as soon as possible to make that process as easy as possible.
Great. So we're getting closer to the end. Kind of want to ask you, do you have any kind of bottom lines, like a couple of things where you've seen Colby make the biggest difference in practical applications with your clients? And we've talked about a lot, but are there a
Yeah.
couple that you just see over and over, like these are the key things?
Honestly, yes. I mean, hiring is always something that, once we incorporate Colby into their firms, it kind of is almost a non-negotiable in terms of like, why would you not do this moving forward? And anytime too, as I mentioned, any company, regardless of what it is, people. It's always that. And this is one place that I love Colby so much for this because it's an area that I don't know that any other assessment covers this. And it's just how people get things done. And so I think people overlook that so much. And so, with either role alignment or delegation is huge, but really understanding like that's just the way this person is wired and that's okay and that's great. So, yeah, so hiring is absolutely a place that is like bottom line non negotiable. Why would you not use this?
I love how positive you are about the hiring part, by the
Mm,
way, because, and this is maybe just a little almost selfish comment, but it's not selfish like getting more people to use it for financial reasons. But I get frustrated when people kind of assume that when you use us in selection, it's all about who to say no to. And I love the approach that you're taking and the way
mhm.
you're describing it as no, we want somebody who's going to be a great fit in that job.
Yes,
And look, there's some people who aren't going to be a great fit at your company, regardless of their Colby result or anything
correct.
else. But it really does help both sides.
Yeah.
When it's done well, I think part of doing it well is having that right frame of mind. So I love that you guys do that.
Absolutely. There is no other way. And I think the other side of that too is people don't know what they don't know about themselves and they will answer questions by human nature the way that you probably want them to answer it. But I have learned time and time again, through iteration of this Colby is really it's not going to be a smooth and easy ride in this position. And so I know that going in. And again, it's not to disqualify. And that's one thing I really, really want to reiterate. It is to put someone in another position that's going to align with them. Again, if they're a cultural fit and everything else fits. But we did that before. I actually submitted this when we won the award, as someone interviewed once for us for a marketing assistant position. And through the process, had a couple things she kept saying that were kind of sales. She took the Colby, and I was like, "This is our Colby for sales at this company," and she'd never done sales before. We talk to her, and she's like, "Are you sure about this?" She accepts a job in a sales position, and she went on to sell over $1 million at our company.
Wow.
And that was just something that we knew from the beginning. Like, let me put you in the right place. It's going to be great
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I love that so much because that's our mission is to help people when they understand their strengths, they can achieve the things that they really care about. And,
Mhm.
if you think for her, if she's really narrowly focused and she thinks, well, all I want to do is marketing. Okay, well, then maybe if that's all you want to do, then find the right marketing position
Mhm.
that's going to fit your instinctive strengths. But if she's thinking more broadly of, look, I want to have a career that is interesting and I'm,
Mhm.
financially successful, et cetera, et cetera, Colby can help figure that out and give
Oh,
her the
yeah.
roadmap that other people may not be giving her. So, honestly, I just want to say thanks again to you
Yes.
guys for the way you approach things, the positive attitude and outlook that you have. You guys are our preferred provider in the legal industry because you've got not just the training and the experience and the reach, but also kind of those intangible parts. So we really
Absolutely.
appreciate that partnership. I said I would do a little interpretation,
Yes.
and really for you, it's less interpretation because you've heard it's just more kind of letting people hear, okay, you've heard Jessica talk. She's an 8733. So what the heck does that mean? So 8 in fact finder, initiating fact finder. So, I'll talk to you, Jessica, but again, I
Yes.
know you know these
Yes,
things, but
yes. I will
with that
always
8
pick
in
up something new.
yeah. So with that aid in fact finder, you're all about figuring things out. You need to be an expert. People will ask you to guess. When you guess, and I'll put that in quotes, it's because you already know the answer and you're not really guessing and you are smart enough to know the right way to communicate with somebody so you don't sound like a know-it-all. They think you're kind of guessing, but you're confident to do that because you already did the research. You've seen it 7 times and you know you can give the answer. If it truly is a guess, you will kind of put some boundaries on it. You'll say,
Mhm.
well, I think it's kind of like this, but that could be plus or minus 20%. I have a feeling. And give a couple of caveats. You, again, so that people remember this isn't about what you can and can't do. So, can
Mhm.
you give a quick summary? Sure. But that's not the right role for you. If
Right.
somebody, expects a person who's going to be simplifying. That's not you. And again, you know that, but it's great when people understand what they can count on with you. And when you really are thriving is when you do know the information and the details and you're on top of things. You need to have time because, and this is often a curse. And I'm an 8 in fact finder too, as
Yes.
you see on the screen. And for the listeners, 8 in fact finder, it's hard to turn that brain off sometimes. You will see things and you'll need more information even when it's not necessarily there, and you'll want to ask 6 more questions even though the person you're working with is kind of at their limit. Understand that. So as an 8 in fact finder, understand that there are those times that you may be frustrated because you aren't able to take action the way you really want. Find an outlet for that, whether it's, okay, I can't ask the client more questions because they're going to get really annoyed with me.
Yep.
I'm going to circle back and ask their assistant or, somebody else internally at Crisp those questions. So you need to do that.
Yes.
Okay, that's 7 in follow through. So again, that's what we would call initiating because it's that 7, 8, 9, or 10 range, all about systems and structure. You need to create, not just follow systems that are there already, but you need to create systems and organization. That's why it was great. Michael brought you into Crisp
Yes.
to do that, but you need to continue to do that. And being smart about understanding, okay, well, we already have good systems in place. You don't want to tear them down and start all over again if they're efficient. So that for you might mean, all right, where are the areas that we really are lacking or where's the area for growth? And people often don't really get that a lot of businesses thrive and grow when people like you who are initiating follow-throughs are allowed the time to build a system and then put that into practice with clients. We think of growth only coming through quick start, and I think that is wrong. It's not true. Yes, there are some kind of the almost stereotypical growth kinds of things because quick starts take risks and they have new ideas all the time that they can't even stop themselves from coming up with. But part of your instinctive genius, to think of it that way, is you can look at your business operations or kind of your offerings to your clients and think, if we could put this into a 6-step process and make it easy to follow, you have a new revenue source all of a sudden.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just the back end administrative. And sometimes initiating follow-throughs get pigeonholed as, well, they're just administrative people, not necessarily. So
No.
You use that at a very high level, and I love that. Okay, you're 3 in quick start. And I'll say this with every mode where it's the 1, 2, or 3 that counteract. We too often think of it as what you are lacking. I am not going to describe what you lack in quick start. You have a great energy and talent in quick start. You prevent chaos. You stabilize. And, you've described Michael being the person who's kind of creating a little of that chaos with his initiating quick start. You balance that, and it sounds like you guys have found a great way to be a constructive, collaborative team rather than a clashing, destructive kind of.
Yes.
You complement each other rather than just conflict with each other all the time.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a great thing to bring to the table with your natural inclination to figure out, hey, what's working? Let's stick with that.
Yes.
And then adding, it's maybe a cognitive piece to also know, hey, there are times when I need to back away from just always stabilizing because the firm as a whole needs other stuff. But that quick start that you have is fantastic. Same thing with your implementer. So let's not talk about what it is, and let's talk about what it is. You have a great ability to deal with intangible stuff. You will imagine, you will think about, you will use words rather than physically construct things to demonstrate or to show problem solving. And given what you guys do, that's super important. I know there are parts of your business like the video production. Hey, some of those people need initiating implementer because it really is about the physical surroundings. But for you, it's more about the intangible pieces, and that's what you'll bring. So that's just kind of the quick overview. Since you have me, I don't know if you have any questions about any of that. You know it really well, so I'm not expecting if you do.
No questions. You hit it all. I mean, exactly. And I love the way you even said you prevent chaos. That is often how I think of stabilize, but I like prevent chaos as well. And so no, it is me to the core, and I've learned to work with it and really just make things the best they can be with it.
Great. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for your time. I'll say to the listeners, if you guys, you heard me talk about Jessica's strengths. If you haven't taken your own Kolbe Index, you can just go to Kolbe.com, Kolbe.com, and take your own Kolbe A Index, and the results will give you. It's similar. It's more comprehensive because there's more
Oh
to it
yeah.
than just the quick description I gave. Sometimes I like the hearing part. Although actually, Jessica, as you know, Kathy Kolbe does an audio version of the results too for those. So for those of you who are more hearing based rather than just reading
Mhm.
based, there's that you can listen to. So yes,
Yes.
I'd encourage all you people to do that if you haven't. And yeah, I'd also encourage you, if you guys are in the legal industry or others, contact Crisp if you'd
Yes.
like to get their help expanding your business and growing. So thanks so much, Jessica.
Yes. Thank you, David. It was such a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Great. We'll talk to you again
All right.
soon. And thanks to all you podcast listeners. We will hear from, and you guys can hear from us again soon too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Powered by Instinct. This show is brought to you by Colby Corp, a company that helps leaders and organizations thrive using the only instinctive strengths assessment on the market. If you enjoyed this episode, then follow Powered by Instinct wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or join us online at Kolbe.com/podcast for all the latest episodes.